Welcome to Big Life Weekly Series, where we empower high achievers to break free from limits, unlock their natural potential, and live a big life. I'm your host, Robert Acosta, and each week we will explore the strategies, mindsets, and tools you need to thrive, not just in your professional career, but in every aspect of your life. Whether you're a leader looking for a better balanced life, an entrepreneur aiming for sustainable success, or someone ready to take the next step toward your best self, this podcast is your space to grow, reflect, and take action. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, I'm Robert Acosta. I'm with Stephen Sheiner from Camden Street Partners in Indiana, USA. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
Well, let's jump right in and start showcasing your business. Stephen, can you give us a 90-second overview of what your business does and why you got into it?
Sure. So essentially, Chemistry Partners is the vehicle that I used for the consulting work or the business work that I do. And my expertise and specialty is in monetization, looking for ways in which to monetize and create additional revenue for companies. So I work with a variety of clients, often as a chief revenue officer or just a consultant. And what I do is I look at their income streams and try and find ways to either expand the income, find new business models that they can employ, or find additional ways of telling the story that will generate additional revenue.
Okay, how you started that business? What
It's really a culmination of a lot of experience. So I started out early on in the home improvement industry during the first energy crisis in Canada, actually in Toronto, where was a installer, started an installation company for urea formaldehyde foam insulation. That was a product that got injected into the walls and solidified into a hard foam for insulation purposes. And it was a great business, and I built it up to the point I had 11 trucks on the road, close to 100 employees, and then they banned the product as a carcinogenic. But during that, what I really learned was a lot of tools of direct marketing, direct sales, understanding how the sales process works, and built up a fairly substantial sales organization to sell it. I then moved into the vending industry, and I helped a Canadian company turn around with a coffee machine. And that was an interesting business because the problem that they were having, the company Venking was having, is the machine was a tabletop fresh brewed coffee machine. Now, this is 35, 40 years ago. And it was a really unique piece of equipment that didn't fit the market. The coffee service people used what they call, the pour over machines, right? Which is you're familiar with. A big pot of coffee is brewed, sits there for 10 hours, and you throw it out. And the vending made good coffee, but sat there for a long time. The vending machine industry had big machines that had lousy coffee. Now today they're much better. But back then it was all instant. And this machine was very expensive and brewed one cup of coffee at a time. So the vending machine guys didn't like it because it was too small and too expensive. The coffee service guys didn't like it because the story we were telling was, why brew a pot of coffee, make one cup at a time, and don't waste it. And if you were in the coffee business, waste was actually your best friend, because the more they wasted, the more coffee they bought. You made your money giving away free equipment that was cheap and sold coffee, which was expensive.
Wow.
So what I learned from that was, if you're trying to try something that nobody understands, go to people who don't understand it. And instead of trying to sell to the vending machine people and to the coffee service companies, which the company had been doing and failing at, or trying to do and failing at, we turned it into a business opportunity and went to people who didn't know any better and got involved in telling them rent the machines and sell coffee. And we built a network of distributors throughout Canada, and then into the United States, where I wanted to move. And that got me to the U.S. For a company that was in the business of selling vending equipment direct to location. We would go into businesses and sell them vending machines, even though we didn't quite position it that way until we got to the final end of the pitch. But we were selling vending machines on the basis that a company that was small, that wanted vending for their employees, would be better off owning and managing their own machines than having a lousy vending operator who left the machines empty and coins getting stuck and stuff like that. So I spent 2 years while I was working towards getting a green card doing nothing but hiring and training salespeople. I hired probably 5,000 plus salespeople throughout the United States. We'd hire 200-300 a week. We did it with a process where we would run big ads in the Sunday newspaper, have them all come into a central database, a central bank, Our people there would then convince them to go to meetings. We'd go to a meeting, we'd pitch 50 to 100 guys at a time. Sometimes there were women. And we basically hired anybody that would say they would come on. We'd train them in 3-4 days and then send them out on the street to go sell. Did this for close to 2 years all over the U.S. I opened up offices in Florida, Ohio, some places in California, Kentucky, Indiana, Indianapolis, and then I supported offices that we had in other cities. Once I got my green card, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, so I went into advertising, and nobody would hire me. And I called everybody I could in the yellow pages, starting at A, working my way to Z, which in Canada would have been Z. And essentially, the only guy that would hire me was this one particular guy whose company was AA Action in Advertising, which if you remember the yellow pages, or some of your people do,
Yes.
that was the equivalent of getting the best keyword you could, right? Be the first with an AAA in the yellow pages. He sold car dealerships. I worked with him for about 4 or 5 months, got really lucky, sold a couple of big deals. It didn't want to pay me, so I ended up quitting and opening up my own direct marketing ad agency, which I ran for about 15 years.
Wow.
And I did direct response advertising, a lot of database advertising, and I tried to do things that were out of the box. So I was the first guy to ever advertise a private prison, worked successfully. I had clients with a lot of database marketing. I did a lot of direct marketing with data back when data was just starting, in the days when you used to use mainframes, list brokerage and things like that. Unfortunately, I had a setback because of some health, caused me to rethink things. And when I got better, I jumped into the internet back in 1998-99 and became one of the founders of mp3.com, which we were one of the biggest IPOs, at least early on IPOs. We went public as MPP3. We were traded on the NASDAQ exchange and then ultimately got sued for copyright infringement for something that was just dumb on our part.
Okay.
Ended up selling it to Vivendi Universal for about $500 million, and which at one time we had a market cap of over $3 billion, so it was actually a come down. From there, I was the chief revenue officer for Vivendi Universal internet properties in the United States. Vivendi ran into a bit of a problem where they decided to basically get out of all the businesses that were unprofitable and closed all their internet divisions. The only thing they kept was Universal Music because they couldn't sell it, which has turned out to be lucky for them. And then since then, I've started a couple of companies. I had a skincare line, which I built up and sold. I had a toy company, which was a disaster. And in the interim, I've been working with a variety of companies across all kinds of industries around taking the experience I've had in monetization and applying it to their businesses. And I work on a particular theory that actually is the genesis of was the internet. So if you think prior to the internet, and by that I mean prior to really 99, 2000, 2001, the buyer always was at a disadvantage from the seller because they had no information. If you wanted to buy a car, you had to go to a car dealership and let the salesman pitch you. If you wanted to buy a photocopier, you called in all photocopier companies. They came in. Each one told you what they had, and you made a decision. But the salesperson controlled the flow of information to you, right? They'd send you a brochure. The internet changed all that. It put the power of information in the hands of the buyer. And it's completely changed the way that companies can operate and the way they need to operate. And what it really did was it created a situation in which the value of everything that is sold can become, or a good portion of it becomes easily commoditized. So you have a service, I want to sell that service, I go on the internet, what's the only thing I can offer? Cheaper price. So I put it down cheaper. And everything rushes to the bottom. And the only solution for that is for companies to do what Amazon has an effect on, which is what I call market around the edges. And here's what I mean by that. And I'll use Amazon as a perfect example. If you look at Amazon's e-commerce business, it's not very good. For the amount of revenue that they generate, the profit they generate from the e-commerce portion, Amazon.com, is really very poor compared to Walmart or even Target. Look at their numbers. They're not there. But the e-commerce business allowed them to have the marketplace. Highly profitable. They sell other people's stuff. No cost of goods to them, just commission. They have Prime Music. They have Prime TV. They have AWS. They have all of these high margin businesses that were only possible because they had the e-commerce dominance in their e-commerce website.
Right.
The marketplaces, all those things couldn't exist without a low margin business in the middle. And that's what I call marketing around the edges. So what I try and do is I try and look with companies around what are those things that will not be constrained by margins because they have a natural advantage because they're doing something that creates that advantage. So here's an example. For a company called Brain Corporation, they're a company based in San Diego, California. They created a technology stack for indoor autonomy. And the industry that they used as proof of concept, and the only industry they've actually been successful in, was floor cleaning equipment. That's large industrial floor cleaning equipment that goes up and down the aisles in grocery stores, warehouses, etc., and cleans the floors going roughly 3 miles per hour. I mentioned the speed for a reason. They go up and down the aisle autonomously and eliminate the driver. In retail and in warehouses, there are now robots that go up and down the aisles doing shelf-level analytics.
Wow.
They look at the shelves, they collect the data, send it up to the cloud, and it's analyzed for all kinds of different things: out of stock, price compliance, planogram compliance. If you know what that means, that's the design that a manufacturer gives to a retail store and says we want our shelf to look like this since we're paying for it. All these different things are done by robots separately. Well, I looked at that and I said, well, if I've got a robot cleaning the floors up and down the aisles at 3 miles per hour, about the same speed as a robot that is doing shelf-level analytics, why is that floor cleaning equipment not collecting shelf-level data when it goes up and down the aisles? All it needs is a towel, and everything else is there.
Yeah, right.
So today, Brain Corporation collects shelf-level data in Walmart stores, Sam's Clubs, and dozens of other locations with their scrubber. They had a natural advantage over a robot company because the cost of the robot is paid for by the scrubber. Opened up a whole new market, which was data collection, and they had an advantage for it. Those are the kinds of things that I look for.
So yeah, it looks like you have lots of experiences, and I think you kind of define, or one of the definition of being a consultant or consulting in general, consulting business, is to find or convert a failure into an opportunity, or as you mentioned in the last example, do opportunities all the time that you can leverage whatever you're doing. You can even do more of whatever is established, like the robot that is cleaning the floor. So what do you enjoy the most about your work in all your experiences that you have had?
So, I mean, the most fun I had, obviously, I think was mp3.com. That was sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find it again. What I enjoy is actually the puzzle. I mean, it's not always applicable. I can't always find something. I can't always help. So I take conversations with almost anybody and everybody because I never know what I'll discover and what I'll learn. The reason I think I'm effective at what I do is because I've done so many different things and worked in so many different industries across so many different opportunities. And what I have found very often, especially with younger companies and younger company owners or founders that are engineers, is they just don't know what they don't know. They have no understanding of what came before them, or very little, and they think what they're doing is new when it's not really new. It's actually just more often just an update I guess an evolution that has been enabled by a change of technology or a new technology. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. Most people don't remember a company called Webvan. Webvan blew through probably $500 million back in 99, 2000, 2001 during the internet bubble. Webvan whole business model was grocery store delivery. But their business model required that they put up warehouses and that they hire drivers and they have vans and they actually take orders over the internet but deliver it themselves. They failed miserably. I mean, they, like I said, blew through $500 million of investor money. Wow. But the concept was right. People want grocery delivery, but the tools weren't there. Then all of a sudden, Uber, in effect, invented or at least promoted the idea of a distributed workforce being managed through smartphones. And then that allowed the whole concept to evolve to the point where you didn't need the warehouse, you pick from the store, and now we have, everybody knows about delivery for grocery stores.
Right.
So it wasn't that they were wrong. The need was there. The need was there. The tools weren't in place. Well, a lot of businesses that I talk to and a lot of founders that I talk to, they think they've invented something, but they haven't really invented something. They've modernized an approach. And if they understood what the last guys did, they'd actually get there a lot faster.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, the advantage that I bring to the table. And that's what I enjoy doing is looking at what pieces did they leave out because they just didn't know those pieces existed or could exist if they did it.
Right.
Here's another example. A company called My Balto has a great product. The idea was to connect people with their medical, with their pet records. So I don't know if you know much about animals, pets and veterinary medicine, but about 40% or more of the animals that get put to sleep are not put to sleep because they can't be helped, but because people can't afford to help them. They have a choice, right? Fix your dog or pay the rent.
Right. Oh.
So vets put a lot of animals to sleep because they have no choice, not because they want to, but they can't do pro bono work all day long.
Right.
The second issue is that when you go into, if you have a pet, you go into an emergency room, they're going to run all these expensive tests because they don't have any records to find out what the medical history is of the pet. They don't know the blood, they don't know all this stuff, and the vet's office is closed, you don't carry it around with you. So vets have electronic pet records. The hope was that vets would allow these electronic pet records to be put into the My Balto app so people would have access to their records so that they could go into an emergency room and say, here's my pet's record, so you know that you don't have to run these tests and you have the history, right? But they couldn't get cooperation from the vets because, one, there was nothing in them, and the vets didn't want to give access to all the medical records and do all that stuff. Logical enough. There was nothing in it for it. So what I had them do was create the My Balto Foundation. It's a 5013C that helps people pay for their operations and things that they need for their pets if they don't have the money.
Right.
And what we did was we set it up so that each veterinarian office becomes a member of the 5013C by collecting money at checkout when people are paying their bill, asking people if they would like to donate money to the My Balto Foundation to help other people in that practice who can't afford to fix their pet. So when you go to pay your bill, it's $200 or whatever. They say, would you like to add $5 or $10 to the My Balto Foundation to help other people in the community who can't fix their pets? Well, if you're a pet lover, you'll give $5 or $10, right?
Yeah.
Well, in order to do that, the veterinarian has to allow My Balto access to their electronic pet records and their payment systems to facilitate the collection of the data and the disbursement of the money. And the vets look at it and say, well, I'm going to get a fund which will help me pay for people that can't afford it, so I won't have to put animals to sleep I don't want to put to sleep. And we get access to make the data available to their patients, because in order to do it, they've activated their data within the My Balto Foundation.
Right.
So that was experience that I had with 5013Cs and an understanding of how those work that allowed me to come up with a concept that completely turned around the proposition for the vet to make it something they want to do instead of something they wouldn't do.
Right.
And opened up all kinds of other revenue streams.
That's great. So in what you do today, because I know you've been doing a lot of things and you're very curious and find opportunities everywhere. So in what you're focusing today, who is your ideal client and what significant outcomes can they expect when they work with you?
So here's the way I'm going to put it. I don't help everybody because I can't. Sometimes I look at it and I just don't know enough. I might be able to give you some good advice about marketing or look at your stack and say, here's things you should do for marketing that you're missing and things of that nature. But there's no big idea there because there's no big idea there. Right? So it doesn't, not everyone's a home run. I will tell you that I don't really care what industry they're in or what they're doing. I look for the opportunities and I don't sort of pick and choose and say I specialize in this. I've done a lot of stuff with robotics. I've done a lot of stuff with software. I don't really care about that. What I have found, Robert, the real key is the individual that I'm working with. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the person that's curious enough to say, I don't know what I don't know, and is open to hearing ideas without saying, no, that's not how it's done. What I have found is that most of the operators that I've been successful with, they come in with a mindset that says, what I'm doing is not necessarily working as much as I want to be. I've got an open mindset to try and look at other things. And
Yeah.
even if it sounds crazy, I'm going to listen to it because maybe it's not as crazy as I think it is. And
Mm.
that's what I'm looking for. It's more the person than it is the company or the opportunity.
And
I've been
it,
in all kinds of situations where I think I could help, but the person
yeah.
thinks he knows everything and it's a waste of my time.
And can you find easily that kind of persons that had that mentality or mindset open to say, well, I don't know what I don't know, or what is the challenge to find those?
It's the challenge that every consultant has, which is you kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince.
Yeah, I know. So is
And
there a trend? Is there a trend that you see? Well, something's changing. That there is a trend that in the consulting business you want to be on top of that. Something that you see that is
so
coming.
I'm not, I don't think of myself, I guess I'm doing consulting in a sense, but I don't think of myself as a consultant so much as a guy you hire to sort of partner with.
Hmm, of
Um, and I only take on things I think I want to do.
course.
I'm at that point, fortunately, where if I just don't want to do it, I just say, I just don't want to do this. And it could be because I don't think the person's going to listen, or I just don't think I want to work with that person,
Right.
or I just can't help them enough to justify the amount of time and effort that I'll go into it.
Right. So in all your experience, which is vast, of course, we have heard it. So is there a one thing, or what is the one thing that has been most instrumental in your success? What would you say?
Not looking at the obvious is the key. The key is really just asking a lot of questions and don't look at the obvious, look for
Yeah.
the evidence. It's a mindset. It's just a willingness to say, I don't know what I don't know. What else can I do, or how can I do it, or what's different about it? The other thing is listening as much as possible to what people are telling me.
Hmm.
So what I've found, especially with entrepreneurs, is there is a tendency when you're talking, they're not really listening. They're trying to figure out how to answer you. What I have found, and it took me a long time to be able to do it, is that I want to actually listen to you and ask you a lot of questions and hope that I'm going to get answers that we both can believe make sense. But it's the listening part that's the hardest part, and it's hard for me as well because I
Right.
always I want to jump in and do something, but it's the listening part that's critical. When customers tell you things, they often don't even know they're telling it to you, right? You you have this tendency when you hear somebody say they don't like something, you have a tendency to try and fight that I don't like it. So
Right.
let me tell you why you should like it, as opposed to listening them to understand what they don't like, so you can say to yourself, "Oh, okay, that may make sense. Maybe there is something there that's better, or it's doing it." Um, Little things. So I have a guy that I've been just helping because I like him. And I noticed that he sends a report. It's a SaaS business, and he sends that report every Sunday night. And I called him up. I said, when do you think the worst time to send me my weekly report is? Sunday night. I'm a business person. I'm not necessarily looking at my email on Sundays. And if I do, I'm not necessarily wanting to go look at any detail.
Right.
And then Monday, when I want to look at it, what's the first thing that happens? I do all my Monday email.
Right.
If you want to send that, Monday afternoon for the following week, but not Sunday night. Little things like that. You look
Yeah.
for it. And how do I know that? Because as a customer, because I happen to like his system and I'm using it, I noticed he sent it to me on Sunday night and I ignored it because I didn't want to deal with it till Monday. And then Monday showed up, I didn't even bother looking. That's
Yeah,
what
I think there's a lot of things that you have learned, I guess, in terms of how human mind works and how we behave as humans, like listening, like understanding, like and accepting that I don't know that I don't know. So all those kind of things is like a soft wires that you need to develop in order to really solve a problem or really help your clients. So you think that that's an area that you have grown and maybe there is an
yeah, and
opportunity to grow?
yes, and continue to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what there was a time when you could look at the world and say, I got a college degree, I know what I need to know, now I'm going to go out in the world and beat it.
Right.
If you're not continually learning today, you're dead. You're dead in the water.
Of
There's
course.
nothing that's the same as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Oh,
Anything that you learned in college 40 years ago, which I went to college 40 years ago, most of it, it's good to know it because it's a basis, but the truth of the matter is the world has changed dramatically. And changing not necessarily for the better, but changing dramatically. So if you're not paying attention and you're not learning on an ongoing basis, you're dead in the water. You're a dinosaur. And the rapidity of becoming a dinosaur is now it's not every 40 million years, it's 40 weeks. I mean, really, it's that fast. So I think that's the real key that every business person has to understand is that if they're not trying to learn and they're not absorbing the changes and paying attention,
Uh,
if
yeah,
somebody will eat your lunch. It's as simple as that.
I remember the adagio that if you want to have different results, you have to change the way you do things. But let me tell you, if you really want to get ahead, the world is changing all the time. So if you even do the same things, you're not going to stay in the same place. You're going backwards. So because the way the world is changing, I just say the information and everything is going faster than just staying in one place. So yes, that mindset of growing all the time and not being an expert, because the experts are very well suited for a world that doesn't exist anymore. So you have to keep learning, right?
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this weird question. If you could have lunch with one person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
One person living or dead, who would it be and why? Wow, I don't know that I necessarily easily pick one person.
Well, with the first one that comes to your mind.
Yeah, I would probably pick John Vonnegut Jr. I just always was fascinated with his writing and his mind. Probably the wrong choice, though.
No, that's not wrong or right.
No, I mean, Kurt Vonnegut was amazing. But I don't know. One person.
You have to say why, so some questions
Well,
that you
his,
have.
his writing, but if I really thought about it, he's probably not the person I would end up picking. Um, wow, I don't know. Honest truth, I think it's too big a question. I mean, if you told me give me 10, it'd be probably easier to find 10 people I'd like to have lunch with. But
Okay,
that one, I don't
that's
know.
good. That's gonna be a homework for you, and you send me an email later.
That's going to bug the hell out of me, Robert. All day I'm going to be saying that. Who was that guy I'd like to eat with? So,
No, no worries. So tell us, what is the best way for people to contact you if they'd like to work with you or discuss referral
well,
partnerships?
I don't have a web page. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. Easily enough, just find me on LinkedIn
Yeah?
and just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to reach out. I will tell you that philosophically, I'll talk to everybody. I mean,
Okay.
that's the one thing that amazes me about young business people today is they don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly amazed at how people will don't answer phones or don't respond to emails or stuff like that and think that that's smart. I believe that talking to people is one of the keys to finding and learning,
Of
is
course.
to find out what people know. So anybody that reaches out to me, I'm going to respond to. And I think that most people should take that attitude because at the end of the day, you might waste 1 or 2 minutes finding out that it was a waste, it might be a waste of time. But every once in a while, there's going to be that person that tells you something that you didn't know,
Yeah,
made
definitely.
every other wasted time worthwhile. So
Yeah.
I'm easy to
That's
contact on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way.
excellent. And as you say, it's not about talking. You connect with the people, so they're gonna talk, and then you listen. You
Yes,
listen to understand, not listen to respond, right? And
exactly. And I
I
will
think,
say one other thing for people just starting out, if they're listening to this. When you get older, you will find out that the most valuable thing you built was your network.
yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah,
if you're not paying attention when you're young to that network, you're going to miss out when you're older. Because the truth of the matter is, when you're young, you're starting out with a lot of people that have low level positions. They're just starting out themselves. But that's the guy that's going to be, or the woman that's going to become the president of the company, or the governor of a state, or some kind of positions of power. And so the reality is the connections and the network that you build when you're young is what will power your career when you're older.
oh, definitely.
That's
Okay.
that's a
Well,
key.
this was amazing. I hope I've been a good listener because you have a lot to really share. So thank you so much, Stephen,
My
for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me on Big Life Weekly series. I hope today's episode gave you the insight, inspiration, and tools you need to move closer to the life you're meant to live. Remember, true success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about how you feel while you achieving it. If you found value in our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with others who are ready to embrace their big life. Until next time, stay focused, keep growing, enjoy life, and break free.